Hey y'all, good morning. It's Ned over at My Philippine Dreams, N to the E to the D over at MPD, coming at you from Dumaguete City, the city of gentle people. Filipino cultural psychology. A lot of times when we come as expats, as foreigners to the Philippines, we get overwhelmed by what's going on around us, why Filipinos are doing certain things or not doing certain things. Over time, it can even get worse. If we don't try to put some effort into figuring out why things are happening the way they're happening here, our own frustration levels are going to increase, our anxiety is going to increase, we're going to get stressed out, and we're going to lose what little hair we have left. So, as foreigners, it's kind of our duty, or it serves us best, to try to figure out the local cultural flow. In the West, it's pretty direct, it's sort of confrontational, things are done to other people's faces, and the expectations are pretty clear. Here in the East and a lot of Southeast Asia, things are done differently. They're more indirect, there's a lot more history and a lot more influence behind why people are doing the things that they're doing, and there's a lot of socio-cultural influences that are going on. So in this series, and it's going to be a multi-part series, sorry, we're going to be looking at some of my own personal reflections on why Filipinos do the things they do or don't do the things that they do, because it's important to know. All right, so over the course of this series, what we're going to be looking at is family. We're going to be looking at what's called Pakikisama, which is smooth interpersonal relations. We're going to be looking at Amor, propio, which is self-esteem, self-love. We're going to be looking at hiya, which is shame. We're going to be looking at bahala na, which is God willing, it's in God's hands. And we're also going to be looking at things like balat sibuyas, which is onion skin sensitivity. We're going to be looking at crab mentality. And we're going to be looking at some of the other influences that have a really big influence on Filipino behavior. Because when we first get here, we have a lot of questions. We're seeing things going on around us. There's these behaviors, there's these patterns of behaviors that we're seeing. And they can be kind of stymieing, they can be kind of frustrating. For example, why are they so willing to invite total strangers walking by their gate into their family compound for a fiesta celebration? Why are Filipinos so sensitive at times? Why are they so obsessed with the latest fashions and gadgets? Why do they say yes when sometimes they mean no? Or why is it so hard to get like a definitive answer out of somebody? I'm actually going to list out, and there'll be a little scrawl going along the bottom or somewhere in the video, some of the questions that we're going to be trying to answer over the course of this series. But before we get into some of those pillars of Filipino cultural psychology, we got to take a brief look at the history of the Philippines, which is basically a mishmash of foreign influence. First you had the original Indo-Malay settlements, then you had the Chinese mercantile empire influence, so you get that real hardcore Asian influence. And the Chinese mercantile empire was huge, and it ran for hundreds of years. The Chinese junks going out, they set up trading posts all across Southeast Asia. And then you had 330 years of the Spanish being here and colonizing and doing the things that they did. So you have a big Spanish influence. Then you got 50 years of basically American, what they call Hollywood rule, before we pulled out. Also keep in mind that the Philippines is a young country. It's only had its independence for about 65 years, and it still seems to be trying to establish some sort of cultural identity. So those are some of the cultural influences. Basically, it's like being a person. We are who we were. The sum total of what we are today is what we've been in the past and our experiences and all the things that have influenced us. So let's talk about family. Family is number one. Before we get into all the other stuff, family is the backbone of Filipino cultural psychology. It's all about family, it's all about sacrifice for family. The families here are usually a lot larger than they are in the West, where we have smaller, tighter nuclear families. Here they got, aunts, uncles, grandparents, first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, people that have been hanging around the yard. Sometimes they even incorporate the help into the family, and that becomes part of the family structure. Also, in contrast to the West, ageism isn't really a big issue here. Elders are usually treated with respect. If you'll see, sometimes you'll see younger family members greeting older family members, and they'll do the blessing, the mano, where they pass the hand up to the forehead to show respect. And younger people in the family typically tend to defer to the older people. Even amongst siblings, when the kids, there's actually a little social hierarchy going there, with the younger kids deferring to the older kids. They call them, if it's a boy, if it's the oldest son, it'll be kuya. If it's the oldest daughter, it'll be ate. And all that means is big brother, big sister. And if you've been in the Philippines or you've been anywhere else through Southeast Asia, you'll know how important family is. And I think that's the number one influence on Filipino cultural psychology and why they do the things that they do, some of the sacrifices that they make. The second piece that we're going to talk about briefly today is Pakikisama. Pakikisama is a Tagalog term which basically means smooth interpersonal relations. It was actually termed, that SIR was actually termed in the 1970s by a Filipino sociologist. And it was, I think he did it ironically, that smooth interpersonal relations, SIR, because people use sir and mom here all the time. When you get texts from people, it'll be like good AM sir, good PM sir. And you'll see, even like on Filipino forums, you'll see people calling each other sir, mom, as whatever the gender case may be. Pakikisama also has to do with maintaining tradition, with not rocking the boat, with not making waves, with just going along to make sure everything's done smoothly and everybody's working together for a common goal. It's all about tradition, and it's rather conservative. It's actually the opposite, the antithesis of individualism. It's basically about conformity and doing things in expected ways. It's not being direct, it's not insulting people, it's not being vulgar, it's not getting in people's faces, which is something that sometimes us Westerners do, guilty as charged. And it's just about meeting interpersonal social expectations. It's doing things in certain ways. So in the next installment, we'll get into Amor, propio, we'll get into hiya, we'll get into utang, loob, which is a massive influence here in the Philippines. We'll get into pahalana, we'll talk about colonial mentality, we'll talk about onion skin sensitivity and some of those things. Trying to figure out why Filipinos do the things they do, not only on a personal level, but on a macro government societal level. And if you want to read the article, I actually did a complete article on this over at our website. I'll put the link down in the video description box. And you can click the box at the end of this video and it'll bring you right over to our page. And you can check it out. I actually think it came out pretty well. And just keep in mind that it's not a definitive guide to why Filipinos do the things they do. It's just my reflections and it's my musings on why things happen like they do. This is Ned over my Philippine Dreams. We'll see you next time. Take care. Check out the article. Like, dislike, subscribe, share, all that stuff. See you next time.